What if human history didn't begin where we think it did? What if everything we were taught came much later? Before history, there was humanity. Before cities, before nations, before history had a name, there was Africa. Not the Africa we know today, but a vast ancient land, endless grasslands, silent rivers, a world shaped only by time and survival. This is where our story begins, around 300,000 years ago. In the heart of the African savanna, something extraordinary happened. A new kind of human appeared, Homo sapiens. They were not the strongest, they were not the fastest, but they had something different. They could imagine, they could remember, and they could learn from one another. At first, their lives were simple. They followed the seasons, they followed the rain, they followed the animals. Each day was a struggle, finding water, finding food, avoiding predators hidden in the tall grass. Fire became their greatest ally. It gave warmth in the cold nights. It kept the darkness away. And around the fire, something new began to form. Stories, knowledge, memory. Parents taught children. Elders guided the group. Survival was no longer individual, it became shared. Over thousands of years, small changes shaped them. Better tools, better cooperation, better understanding of the world around them. These early humans did not know it, but they were preparing for something far greater. One day, they would leave Africa, and when they did, the world would never be the same again. Survival was never guaranteed. Every sunrise meant danger. Food was not waiting to be found. It had to be hunted. Early humans did not hunt alone. They learned quickly that cooperation meant life. A single human was weak, but together they became powerful. They studied animals. They learned their paths, their habits, their weaknesses. Hunting was not chaos, it was strategy. One group drove the animals forward, another waited in silence. Spears made from stone and wood became extensions of their bodies. A successful hunt meant more than food. It meant survival for children. It meant time to rest, time to think, but failure had consequences: hunger, injury, death. Over time, humans learned to respect nature because nature showed no mercy. They adapted: faster thinking, better tools, stronger bonds between the group. Every hunt shaped the human mind. Planning, communication, trust. These skills would become the foundation of civilization. Long before cities, long before kings, humanity learned one simple truth: alone we fall, together we survive. Fire changed everything. At first it was feared: lightning, volcanoes, burning landscapes. But one day, humans learned to control it. Fire brought warmth to cold nights. It pushed darkness away. Predators stayed back. Cooked food changed the human body. Less time chewing, more energy for the brain. Around the fire, something new appeared: stories. Sounds turned into meaning, meaning turned into memory. Fire created gathering, and gathering created culture. Humans no longer wandered without shelter. They found caves. Stone walls protected them from wind and rain. Inside these caves, humans left something behind: not tools, symbols, animals painted in motion, hands pressed against stone. These were not decorations, they were messages. Messages to others, messages to the future. This was the first human language beyond sound. Fire lit the walls, and with it, the human mind lit up as well. Humanity had taken another step, not just surviving, but remembering. Before the world was known, there was a decision, not spoken, not written, but felt, a slow movement away from the familiar. For tens of thousands of years, humans lived only in Africa. The land shaped them, the sun hardened them, scarcity taught them patience. But eventually, Africa was no longer enough. Small groups began to move, not as conquerors, not as explorers, but as survivors. They followed rivers, they followed animals, they followed instinct. Each step carried uncertainty. Beyond the horizon, there were no maps, only danger, only hunger, only the unknown. They crossed open plains where the land stretched endlessly and shelter was rare. They walked slowly, they rested often, they carried only what mattered. Then came the deserts, heat by day, cold by night. Water was precious, life fragile. Many did not survive, but some did. Beyond the deserts, the world changed again. Mountains rose, winds grew colder, the land was unfamiliar, and the rules were different. Humans adapted, they always did. As they moved north and east, they were no longer alone. Other humans lived there, Neanderthals, Denisovans, different bodies, different strengths, but not strangers. These encounters were not always violent. Sometimes they watched each other, sometimes they shared land, sometimes they shared blood. Human history is not a straight line, it is a meeting of paths. Over generations, humans spread across continents, into forests, along coastlines, across frozen lands. Slowly, almost invisibly, they became a global species. By the time the ice advanced, humans were already everywhere, not dominant, not powerful, but resilient. This was not the rise of civilization. This was something older, the moment humanity learned to leave home. And once we began to move, we never stopped. The world did not remain warm forever. Slowly, the climate changed. Temperatures fell, seasons grew harsher, ice advanced across the land. For early humans, this was not a challenge, it was a test of existence. The familiar world disappeared, forests vanished, animals migrated or died, cold became constant, hunger followed. Many groups did not survive. Their stories ended without being remembered, but some adapted. They learned to protect their bodies with animal skins. They learned to build shelter against wind and snow. Fire became more than warmth, it became life itself. In the coldest nights, humans stayed close together, not for comfort, but for survival. Children were protected, elders were listened to, knowledge became precious. Over generations, the human body changed. Stronger frames, greater endurance, but the greatest change was not physical, it was mental. Humans learned to plan for a future they could not see. The cold shaped humanity, and those who survived it would carry its lessons forever. Survival alone was never enough. To endure, humans needed each other, not built on strength, but on trust. Over time, small groups became communities. Around the fire, humans shared more than warmth. Gestures became signals, they shared experience. Sounds gained meaning. This was the beginning of language. Meaning became memory. Knowledge no longer died with the individual. It was passed on, and if these forgotten stories matter to you, consider staying with us. More lost chapters are still waiting to be told. Elders taught the young, hunters shared what they learned, mistakes were remembered. Over generations, this shared memory shaped behavior, rituals emerged, shared actions, shared meaning. Humans were no longer just surviving, they were becoming something new. A species defined not only by biology, but by culture. This invisible bond would change everything, because once knowledge could travel beyond a single lifetime, humanity would never truly start over again. Humanity did not begin with cities. It did not begin with kings or monuments or written words. It began quietly, in small groups around fire, in the cold and in the dark. For most of its existence, humanity left almost no trace behind. Tens of thousands of years passed with no cities, no temples, no civilizations. And then something changed. Humans stopped moving. They began to stay. They built. They shaped stone. They measured the sky. They created structures that should not exist so early in history. According to everything we are taught, this should not have been possible, which leaves us with a question. Were the first civilizations truly the beginning, or were they the survivors of something far older? Because before recorded history, there may have already been another chapter, one that was lost, one that was buried, and one we are only now beginning to uncover. This is where the next story begins.